Okay.
I'd like to call the November 16th meeting to order. This is a special meeting. We could all rise. It's 5:13 p.m. for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this meeting is regarding a NISBA convention overview. We will be eating while we talk. So for anybody that cares, that's what's happening.
Michelle, I think we should just state what the NISBA for the people who are watching.
Sure. So the NISBA, So the NISBA convention is the New York State School Boards Association convention, and all of us went to that convention at the end of October, and we found it to be quite useful, we thought, at the time, so we were going to talk about it and go from there. So, thoughts on how you want to get started, or what you want to go through? Were there particular sessions that you had that you felt, that you feel particularly interested in sharing those pieces of the sessions?
I went to a couple different ones that kind of talked about the seal of civic readiness, and that just seems like a really great program. I know we have one student that did graduate with that seal, and I guess I'm not sure what it takes. You know, one of them was trying to sell a software or a platform to track all the hours, and the other one was giving an example of how their students have graduated, ramped up their program, and I guess I'm not sure if that's worth a discussion. I don't know how to ramp that program up here, or if that's something that's on the books, but I thought it would be worth a discussion, especially because then there was an article in those e-clips about a change to the Regents exams, and this is another pathway to graduation, and it seems like it's kind of, how do we go from one student to, 20 or whatever.
Yeah, one of the recommendations from the Blue Ribbon Commission, which I'll talk about in my report, is to embed more civic readiness into a pathway for graduation. So we will be looking at how do we expand that program beyond one student to many students.
Yeah. Does it take just having additional staff to have, you need somebody to be an advisor to oversee that whole program?
It does. So we had one student do it last year, and it was part of a teacher's assignment. It was one of their duties, was to advise and mentor the student through the civic readiness requirements.
Okay.
So that's something that we can look at when we're scheduling. If we have an opportunity for a teacher to use that as one of their contacts to teach class, and then we expand it.
And is that something that students opt into? Okay.
So there'd have to be some education on what it is.
Correct.
Yeah.
For the students.
Yeah. So we'd have to do some promotion of the program, and then try to recruit students to take that pathway.
And it seems like we're already doing a lot of the, there's tons of volunteer opportunities the kids are already doing, and our school seems pretty good in terms of engaging with the community and doing a lot of these things already. So I don't know if it's just paperwork or if there's, maybe they have to do a big project. It just seems like a lot of these kids, especially the ones that presented in one of those sessions, the things that they were doing were kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And, like one of them got the state to change a speed limit in front of the school. And, just having that sort of, being encouraged by the school to be able to do things like that on a much broader scope was kind of cool to see.
I agree. Yeah. So we will work on that.
So did you have a particular, out of all the ones that you went to, particular one of interest?
I liked all of my sessions. I thought they were all relevant. Some were the others obviously, but maybe one worth talking about is suspension disproportionality, if I can say it. That one, there are also 2 sessions that were presented by the Buffalo Public Schools, one on STEM and one on culturally responsive programming. And then another session on farm to school health and wellness and grading policies. Probably the disproportionality and the STEM one would be kind of the 2 that I think.
So we start with the disproportionate.
The creating equity through STEM, STEAM.
I'll talk about that. I'll make that the second one that I talked about. The first one is it's called suspension disproportionality, and I included my notes in the Google Drive, also the slides. I had to get them not from the session, but I had to email the presenter sent them together. One interesting side note is that I spoke with Amy Kahns from the Mohawk Regional Information Center when she was at the inclusivity committee meeting. Because, and I'll talk about that at the 6 o'clock meeting. But just real briefly, one of the exercises that she did was kind of looking at the data of graduation rates, grades, and even suspensions, and this came up. So I asked her about it, and she said that she provides reports and dashboards for schools to specifically look at disproportionality. So I thought that was interesting.
Do we have a suspension problem here?
No, we typically don't suspend students, especially out-of-school suspension. We try to stay away from out-of-school suspensions, and the state is actually looking at introducing some regulations that the state is really discouraging out-of-school suspensions. They want kids in school, and part of that is the disproportionality of students who have been suspended. There is data that supports that students are being suspended disproportionately. We don't have that here. But that's an area of focus from the state. So we typically, like I said, we don't suspend out of school. We do suspend in school. That way kids can stay in school, they can get their work. They're here. If their teacher, if they need their teacher needs them, they can come down to the office, give them work. And it's just, I think it's better for kids to be in school, obviously. Unless it's egregious. You know, if it's a health and safety issue, then obviously you're going to look at, you know, an out-of-school suspension. If there's immediate harm or threat to harm themselves or others, if you will. So, but we can look at that, absolutely look at that data. Amy Combs is the MORIC, the Mohawk Regional Information Center. She's the district data leader, team leader, so she can provide all of that to us.
Yeah, so the presenter was is a professor from Rutgers who works with the state. So statewide, where he talked about not going into everything that he talked about. But one thing that he talked about was the relative risk ratio that is statewide, looking at sort of certain groups of kids who are more likely to get suspended. Mostly male students of color and students with disabilities. So statewide, so there's a formula that they use to look at the risk ratio, and there's a risk ratio for all the states, and for New York it was 2.5. So anything above, so because it's a positive number, 2.5, it means that those students are 2.5 times more likely to get suspended compared to other kids. So I thought it was a very sort of informative, simplified metric, and something that that I thought was a great learning opportunity for us. So the other one is equity through STEM. And this one was one of the ones that was presented by the Buffalo Public Schools. And they talked about some of the STEM initiatives before and after the pandemic. Basically creating, so STEM programming through offering basically high quality CTE programs, giving kids more opportunities to pursue their interests outside of graduation. So being prepared for basically the workforce, a lot of the internships that they have and the partnerships with the University of Buffalo and the museum, all of these things after school and over the summer programming. I thought this was a really great presentation by Buffalo Public Schools in creating this program. That's very interesting.
I think where we can zoom in a little bit more on that is with the BOCES programming, since they do offer so much and so many different opportunities for students. So we wanted to look at STEM opportunities that we can provide in-house. They have, this is how I'm going to pick up my kids, sorry, not going to. But then they have different opportunities.
Yeah. So I think Emma BOCES, some of the things that Buffalo was doing that I'm honestly not sure if it's offered here, maybe, but business administration, environmental engineering, software development, and programming. So one interesting fact, one of the focuses that they put on, and the importance of STEM was that a lot of these engineering jobs tend to get hired from people from abroad, and building skill sets for our students here so that they have the opportunities to be able to pursue these jobs.
Interesting time. We had our superintendent student advisory council meeting today, and a lot of the discussion was around more exposure to opportunities and offerings. And they talked about BOCES offerings. There's engineering, there's gaming, there's a lot of wonderful programs at BOCES. We need to expose our students more to them and make them aware that they are available to them.
I was going to ask that. So with the BOCES program, you have access to all of their programs, or you just affiliate with
Yeah,
certain?
some of them have prerequisites
Okay.
to enter, but yes, they're available to all.
Okay. So even if one student from here wanted to do a
Absolutely.
particular BOCES
Yeah.
program in
Yeah.
particular, okay.
I do think it's helpful that we had a 8th, 9th field trip to take kids to BOCES to teach them things. And I know that because just my daughter went. And then I also think we do some of these things slightly. I mean, not to the extent that we could or we would maybe want to, but even just they're not specials in high school, but the exploratories. Like, Tyler learned how to use a saw yesterday in text class, right? So like they're starting to get some of those things in some of the exploratories in the high school that they have for the 10 weeks that they have them, but definitely doing them further in different ways, I think. But I do think that we have started to push out and do more of those things.
We do, and one of the comments from one of the students today was that because of the pandemic, We had a couple classes that didn't get the opportunity to go to BOCES.
Oh.
So they were unaware of the opportunities. So that's going to be a priority. I'll be talking to Mr. Arquette about this, getting those students up to BOCES and exposing them to all those programs. So,
Bill, you talked about, I think last year, the possibility of maybe doing something where it was like Madison, Morrisville, Hamilton.
Oh, just bringing it closer.
we did that. We partnered with MACNY, the Manufacturing Associates of Central New York, Morrisville, Madison, Stockbridge, and Hamilton combined to go do some work-based learning exposures. They went to Marquardt, they went to Knowles, some of these higher tech engineering companies. Didn't really work out the way we thought it would. The kids really didn't get much out of it because Johanna does so much work-based learning already. There was more resume writing. There was exposure to those opportunities, but it was basically a tour of their facilities. There wasn't an opportunity to sit down with HR. There wasn't an opportunity to say, these are the skills we're looking for. It was basically a tour because the three other components don't have the programs that we have here to prepare students. There's more about resume writing, that type of thing. So we actually backed out of that partnership, and so did another school, because it just wasn't, we weren't getting what we thought we would get for the money that we were investing. We thought we could do more with Johanna here.
And with BOCES, they're starting to expand their programming in different areas. So there will be a program out of the Morrisville Elementary School. And what they're trying to do is bring programming closer to the kids in different areas. Like, they can't bring every program to Morrisville, right? Like, they can't have every program in Rome and in Morrisville and at the BOCES campus. Like, you can't do that. But what they're trying to do is spread some of it out a little bit so that they can possibly at least take one barrier away, which is the distance. Obviously, we still bus the kids the distance, but it just provides a different avenue.
An interesting conversation today, too. We hosted a Waterville senior who was on a work-based experience. She wants to be an ag teacher, so she was shadowing Johanna. And part of their graduation requirements, the entire senior class from Waterville was outside today at work-based learning experiences. And Johanna and I were having a conversation that we should really look at that, and starting in junior year and senior year. So looking at how do we, because pre-COVID we talked about a capstone project to make it as graduation requirement.
Right.
Revisiting that maybe in a smaller step to begin with. We can certainly send every junior out for one day of the school year, with parent permission obviously, to expose themselves to an interest. We can arrange that. And one day their senior year. I think that's an easy for us. And then expanding on that program. Right. So Johanna and I are going to meet with Mark and Victoria Kustai to try to get that going.
That's great.
And get students more exposure to STEM and technical. And we have regionally, we have Griffiths Air Force Base, and we have SUNY Poly, SUNY Morrisville, we have RIT connections. There's a lot of tech connections locally that we can expose our students to.
I think it's also
Micron's coming.
also important to talk about what their day looks like if they are to invest in these things. So what does your day look like if you're going to a BOCES program? What does your day look like if you're doing this or this? And the more that we add to kind of externally to the school, I think it's important to make sure that we're explaining to the students what it looks like, because I don't think that they all, like, I think there's some idea of, if I go to BOCES, I'm gone all day, but that's not the case, they're not gone all day, right? So, but where's that understanding? Who has that understanding and how much is
What is a big chunk of it?
It is. It's a big chunk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the main reason there's this divide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are courses that are not, it's not like, I like one course.
Right.
And we are having conversations with BOCES to try to do more satellite programs. Like Canastota is housing a sports management program at the boxing hall game. Kids that are interested. So BOCES is willing to look at those satellite programs It's just if you have the facilities to host it. BOCES has the perfect setup. You know, they have, you know, the auto mechanic, beautiful shop to do that. We don't have that. So some programs might work, they might not, but at least BOCES is willing to entertain those satellite programs.
With our fax room.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
seems like a
Yeah.
culinary arts.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Corey, how about you? Anything that you
A
wanted?
couple of good presentations I went to. Probably the one that was most impactful. There's no slides for it here. So I don't think they have them available. Was about the superintendent board relationship. And there's some stuff there that I think we'll probably talk about during the superintendent evaluation and stuff like that. And a lot of it is much more to do with like when you're setting up a contract, those kind of things. But I think more generally, the ideas that I got from there were about, how to attract good talent. Like I think the general principles apply outside of the superintendent too. Like how do you create job ads that are appealing to a broader range of people. So I talked about, things like if you're trying to attract women to a job, studies show that women will only apply to a job where they meet every single bullet, and men are much more willing to apply to a job that I got like most of these, I can do the rest, right? So being careful about how you're wording the job ads and how to approach those. I think that applies to any faculty or staff that we're hiring, making sure that we're, just the way we communicate what that job is might be limiting or expanding our pool of candidates to make it more diverse.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent version. It doesn't have to just be a hiring of a superintendent for those things. It's like full-fledged, any position, keep those things in mind, which is interesting and helpful.
In a similar way, they talked a lot about this work-life balance, both for the superintendent and for the board. And again, I think you can apply that to anybody working in the school, right? Making sure that they have that work-life balance. I think it's particularly important for administrators who don't have, like the union. They kind of helps set those expectations more stringently, by helping that, that culture of like work-life balance and finding ways to make things easier for people, especially, being flexible in certain situations that have to do with, for example, childcare, helping people with the childcare they need, or being flexible with the way that they're, for childcare. I think that also can apply to board members, right? If you can only run for board if you have the appropriate childcare to be here at this certain time, and that's a barrier that would limit now who can run for board. So trying to find all those ways that we can bring those barriers down to them and allow more people to contribute to the school. And like I said, you can apply to any facet of the school. And then another one was really interesting about some DEI work they're doing out in a school, I believe it's out in Schenectady. Very different district than ours, so a very different approach they took to this. I think what I mostly took away from it is this, like, the importance of having somebody with a vision and like a plan and like being able to drive it. So I think our position that we have for SMART, right? Our position I think is going to be really key to us to keeping. You got to have somebody who can drive it, right? And is able to get that vision and get things rolling. And it can be gradual, it can seem sometimes like it's not like huge changes all the time, and that's what it seems like for them, but like over time it really had a larger impact. And more people started seeing the vision and some things started rolling. So I think that was my big takeaway from that one, especially too. So those were the two that were most impactful for me.
That kind of ties into another one that I went to that was Sweet Home Central School District, which is out here in Buffalo. But they've been implementing their DEI policy, and they now also have for fourth graders or fifth graders through seniors, they have student DEI committees also that help to kind of come up with and create events and just kind of, you know, work that vision in at, like, you know, a grassroots level, not, you know, students, you know, interacting with each other instead of from top down. And they were doing some really cool stuff too. They decided students to do an equity audit, and they came up with their own goal and you know, sent that out to all the students and came up with a lot of different ideas on how to do different activities, and they had a diversity day that they decided to host, and they had a really good turnout, but it's been really positive. And they kind of wondered about how to talk about a lot of these bigger issues when you have kids that are, you know, as young as, you know, 9, 10, all the way through 18-year-olds. And it was really a good experience on both sides for them to kind of, so I thought that was neat to see, like, the students really taking charge of things like that also, and being active participants.
Yeah, I think this idea of an equity audit is an important one. I've seen, we did one, last year it was like a board focus one. Do you remember we did this kind of a thing during our self-evaluation for the board?
Yeah.
Kind of looking at it, but I haven't seen like a specific one that's for school. It seems like a lot of the examples I've heard of are schools kind of coming up with their own that fit their district, right? So this idea of an equity audit of like, what are the measures? How are we going to know? You know, kind of sitting out, figuring out like, okay, what are we going to do to measure? Maybe this could be some good work for the inclusivity.
Well, that's what Amy Combs has started to do with inclusivity. So they did a gallery walk. I unfortunately couldn't be there. You'll talk more about it. Looking at our data, kind of doing the first stage of an equity audit, and the plan is after the third meeting to have an action plan that the district can move forward with.
Because I think that's important from what I've gathered, it's important finding the approach to that equity audit that fits your district, right? I think our district is. I think we talked about this in our, I might touch on it, the steering committee. We talked about our meeting. Was Amy okay when it came to this steering committee? Is that the same person?
No.
The cultural aid.
Becky.
So when she came to the culture, she put it on the culturally inclusive framework. Our kind of reaction was like, all right, well, we're ready for, like, we're a couple steps down the road from this, right?
Yeah.
You might not have the same reaction. Maybe different districts you might have that she's in. So finding that approach that fits our district.
But what Amy Combs, sorry, mispronounced her name before, what she's doing is not quite an equity audit, isn't it?
No,
Different.
she's, like right now, she's presenting all of our data from our school report card and looking at suspension rates, test performance, attendance, I don't know what the data she had on, but taking that and then I think the next meeting is to kind of analyze and talk about what the next steps are for that. Is that correct? I wasn't there, so.
Yeah, I think it was more of a, fortunately it was a small
Yeah.
attendance. There was a learning process. The gallery walk was essentially just having the committee members kind of give their impressions of what the data means and how it speaks to them. But I think I've seen equity audits that are more extensive evaluations of schools, which feels a little different than what she's doing. What she's doing is more sort of giving the community an awareness of how we're performing in these different areas of our school. There are 2 more sessions, so I'll talk more about that. What she'll do later on, but yeah, hopefully that'll she'll get a little more into sort of kind of deconstructing what we learned in our last session.
Just because we have about 15 more minutes to move on, so I'll go through a couple that I went to, and then Jen, we're just kind of each picking a couple sessions to talk about quickly. So the first session I went to was about active shooters. It was intense because they showed a video of an actual knowledge of an incident. The biggest thing that I came away with was how important locked doors are throughout the building. And like fire doors, and I talked to Bill about this, like the fire doors that are stuck open, when they close, they should already be pre-locked. So when they close, nobody can go through them, right? And that's the whole point, is to quadrant off different parts of the school. If those doors aren't locked, it allows an intruder further access. But it was really about the fact that this incident took less than 8 seconds. Like, the whole thing was up and done from the time they walked in until they started shooting. Like, it's super quick. And so making sure that that we don't prop doors open. Even if you're just running to your car for something, like how important a locked door in a school really is. And I think sometimes we take it for granted because where we are and what we think, but it can't happen to us. And that's what every school says. And so just making sure that those doors, that we don't prop. Because sometimes that is the thought. I went to a session about sex offenders as parents, and it's interesting to know the rules and the permissions that they're allowed and not allowed. The basic come away from that was they do have the right to be in school for their children's activities. So
Like plays.
they come in for play if they get permission from their parole officer and the superintendent.
Oh,
And so the superintendent can set rules that they have to check in at a certain desk, you have to tell us where you're going to sit, you have to only be in the play, you can't stay afterwards, no hanging out for pictures, like you can put in your rules and regs for what you want and then you follow them.
And that included there being accompanied by somebody?
Yes. Yeah, and you can say like, all right, you can come in, but Mark will be with you the whole time you're in the building, or something like that.
is that something that you ascertain on a case-by-case basis then? Okay.
And so, yes, you only let them in, your approval is for only that one function,
Okay.
and which allows the parent to still be able to participate in their conferences, and, there's different reasons why that might be allowed, and so I thought that was interesting. The parole officers take it very seriously, and if the parole officer feels that the person's hasn't been in great standing, they don't even ask the superintendent. So there's a lot of communication that happens.
So that request comes through the parole officer.
It can come from the individual.
Yeah, but it can also come from the individual.
But they're pretty open communication.
Yes. And it's on a per event basis. There has to be a pre-request and a pre-approval before.
And Bill doesn't need, or any superintendent doesn't need a reason to say no. They can just say no, like if they're just not feeling it that moment, or whatever the case is. So I thought that was really interesting. It was put on by a superintendent and a parole officer, so they had some really, obviously, personal experience that they could talk about. So that was interesting. I went to one about school budgets, and Matt would have loved it, but I doodled the most on my paper. It was a good presentation. I had nothing to report, but I just thought my doodles would share that. Jen, do you have a couple that you want to?
Probably. I obviously I wasn't able to prepare with a couple, so I'm just going to go through my notes quick, I guess, and just throw some things out.
Just pick one or two sessions.
So the FEMA we've already talked about as a behavior screener. There was a question about an LGBTQ plus club that I had briefly mentioned that I think would be beneficial for us to add. The one about giving a mouse a megaphone I thought was pretty interesting, and it talked a lot about advocating and within our own meetings, if we need to, take a 5-minute break, that we're okay to do that and say, we need to go into exec for 5 minutes, and if we really have questions, not to be afraid to do that. Don't just proceed because you're trying to hurry or this or that, really being able to just be able to have those discussions. There was some talk about a financial reality fair that I thought was really cool, that a lot of areas have their local banks organized. And it's the kids, like, they're given a salary, and then they actually have to go around and like buy a car and buy a house and buy their health insurance and like figure it out. So they might have to make a decision, okay, if I'm gonna buy this BMW, well, I might have to have like the smaller house. And I thought that was really cool.
Reminds me of that Cosby show.
Yeah.
For Theo.
Well, and like how many of our kids even really think about that,
Yeah.
you know? So I thought that was really good. I attended a session on strategies for effective board meetings, and I got a lot out of this. I realized like we're doing really good in a lot of ways, and then other ways that we can improve. There was a suggestion to have like a welcome brochure at all of our meetings that, and you can even have like greeters or like a student ambassador, things like that. But actually have, and it sets out our expectations of like our normal agenda, like what is our rules on, you know, community participation, and it's a little bit about our school, and I thought that was really cool. And so Terrytown Board of Education had a really good example of that. I haven't pulled it up yet, but I thought that might be something, even if it's just a one-pager, for people to come to just feel welcome.
We do have an explainer on our webpage, but that makes more sense to have that.
Mhm.
Yeah, as they're here. Right.
But even like the thing of like, that we don't respond to questions. in the
Yes.
meeting, I think
Like,
that'd be
so
nice
that
that
they're-
people know why we're not responding.
Yes, and I thought that was really good. It like lets people, it just gives them a heads up. Like it's not just you, it's not just your topic or question. The other big thing that, and I know like we're doing better with our setup, but they said to really have your setup so that it promotes dialogue amongst yourself, not focusing on your guests. So that like, if you, it's, you know, we were always taught that it's not polite to have your backs to people, but in this situation, like, we need to be able to like read each other's faces without being like, oh, how's Corey? Like, we need to be able, this is our meeting, and yes, well, people are allowed to be here, we need to know that it is our meeting and keep that focus on that. We should have a board activity and presentation calendar. I know we've kind of done this, so like, you know, when there's a high school musical, which one of us are going to be there, things like that, to try to make sure coverage, but kind of have like a shared calendar for that. Have like the no surprises rule, which I think we are pretty good at, but like have a discussion with like the principal or the president or the superintendent ahead of the meeting instead of just like coming out with some big huge thing at the meeting. It said to develop a process for adding items to the agenda, and like even if like we know it, but have something in place for the future. So like our operating procedure, like have kind of a how-to guide for board members. Like how do we get things added to the agenda? If a board comments, like how do we determine out of one of our comments, how does it rise to a level of an agenda item, things like that. So I thought that was kind of good. We should set guidance and a timeline of like what do we share at the meeting, like what's appropriate to be shared in this board setting versus like having a conversation with a principal or things like that. So there was a recommendation to like rotate through the board members or have a vice president at the planning session for the agenda. There was a lot of things about having 2 public comment sessions, but being really strict that the first one can only relate to items on the agenda.
I already did that. I was waiting.
Perfect. I didn't see that. And then the second one is where they could discuss any other items. And then it was a recommendation to add to a standing agenda items for future agenda. So where we just have a conversation of like things that we may want to discuss in the future, and then it would be decided like what is added and what's not. We can have retreats. We can have a discussion on how to make the board better, and that does not need to be in public. So they talked about that. A lot of people think that they do need to be, they don't. President can call for recess at any time. It does not need to be voted on. So I thought that was interesting. We've experienced in the past, it does not need to be voted. You can just call a recess, we can go to a separate place, and we should all know where that place is. Like if a recess is called, this is where we go. Don't have unspoken expectations. That was more public comment stuff. The superintendent or board president can respond to non-factual comments, and they should, and then also reference where the information can be found. But that we don't need to comment on any other things. It was recommended to have people sit when they present, which I thought was interesting. This is more school safety stuff, which I think there was one other thing I just wanted to mention. I just need to find it.
You guys can all have a seat. We'll be on to the next meeting in a moment. Please, feel free to have a seat.
Sounds good.
Okay. I went to a session about like what's the value of one saved life and about being proactive versus reactive. And really, we need to be able to be open to talking about suicide. And a lot of, there's these misconceptions about like talking about it, and making people think about doing it. It's not.
Sorry. Did anybody go to the booth about this source of strength anti-suicide? It's kind of a student peer-led thing. Maybe this is a mark.
I like it.
And maybe we can share with the counselors and see what this presented. Like it was students were there talking about it. Students who were nursing the program.
Oh.
Very interesting. I mean, it seemed they said it, anti-suicide, but also like very much, covers a lot of areas. A lot of peer conversations and peer group meetings where holding on to students for a lot of
Well, I'm gonna wrap this up.
Can I share one more thing? There's the National School Board Association has they're focusing on rural education right now, so they have a free virtual summit on December 13th. I'm going to try to attend. But I'll just leave out this too.
Yeah, I just want to mention a couple other things about board too. So it was recommended that, and I guess in board docs, there's a way to do like a live vote or something in board docs. So a lot of times, people were saying like they want to know how something is voted on. Okay. So they talked about like somehow having like a live vote or somewhere where votes, things like especially things of bigger issue, where people can see them without waiting until the minutes are posted the following month. Like having a more immediate way to talk about that. So I wanted to mention that as well.
Great. Thank you guys for spending your time at the convention. I do think it was beneficial to the district that we all went. Bill has already shared a lot of stuff with the principals, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, I uploaded a couple things, like don't have on the electric bus thing. I didn't go to it, but I thought,
And I uploaded all my notes on there, and I know Heather did reply to saying that she went through a lot of stuff and took a lot of notes, and so that they have been in there. So,
I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, you got 4 minutes.
4 minutes. No, it was just
Get started. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. It is 6:01. We're going to call to order now. And if everybody could please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do believe we have some additions to the agenda.
We do, under 7.6 personnel, we have an added appointment to the substitute list.
Is it 7?
8.6, sorry, 8.6.
Yes. And do we have any other additions to the agenda? May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Any discussion? All those in favor? May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of October 12th?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Tonight, we are welcomed by a lot of people. It's always fun. And we have some teacher presentations. So if you wouldn't mind, I think this list is in the order that the presentations are in the order of, but if not, just talk in the order that you guys know. I think that's California first, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know, this is new for me. Right here? That's me. You didn't know how to pronounce my first name, it's Oster, like an ostrich. So I received 10 hours from the Hamilton Central School to work on developing a course, a new course called Broadcast and Media Production. And the idea behind this course, I'm showing you here a snip from a document that I created, where the purpose of the course is really for students that have enrolled in the class to learn more about video production and also podcasting. So they're going to use their skills not only to enter film competitions, and you might know from when I've been here previously that we participated in such film competitions as the Better Business Bureau. That no longer is in existence, so we're done with that one. We found a new one, however, and that's the Rural School Association, so we're very excited about that. I believe we got the runners-up prize last year for that. And then we have one in the past, the Beyond the Peaks competition, second place for documentary. So we're excited to enroll in that again. And then we would also like to enter the Hamilton International Film Competition because, hey, it's competition right here in Hamilton. Not necessarily a competition, it's basically the Hamilton International Film Festival. So the whole idea behind the course is to not only participate in the competitions, but also to be part of the newsreel, which is a club that I run both at the middle school and the high school level. And the current two members of this course, they may even be here. Is it Amelia? Yep, more packages. And Noah, is she here? Stelberg? No. So those are my current two members. So it's a very small course, and so I'm hoping that it's going to grow a little bit. Not that we have a lot of room in the course, because the idea is that we go a lot to the nice nook and use the computer there, as well as the computer in my classroom. And Tori Kowalski also has a computer that the Hamilton Emerald Foundation very kindly funded. And so we use those three computers to not only create newsreels, to live stream, and to also do some editing work using DaVinci. So that was basically the idea behind the course, to get students to learn this more besides the tech club, and also work on their portfolio so they can use what they created for job, college, whatever the case may be. And as you can see here, it's in line with, does this have a phone too? I won't try that. Maybe it's this. No. It's in line with the New York State Education Department Computer Science and Digital Fluency Learning Standards. So when I came here in 2019, we've been living here for a long, long time, but when I joined Hamden Central School in 2019, I knew very little about tech. It was basically my husband who was dealing with it and my 2 kids. And so I started, soon after I came here, by managing the tech club and not knowing anything, so I was counting a lot on Mr. Rogers and Mr. Larson. So then somehow I got roped into doing what my kids have started to do, which is YouTube. So I started my YouTube channel, basically meant for teachers. And the best way to learn myself how to teach my students is by learning how to construct these videos and edit them and all that. So I've had a lot of fun with that, thanks to being an empty nester now. So I have a little more time to spare. And that has helped me to be confident to run a course like this, even though I have no degree in art, no degree in photography or videography, but one can learn. It's amazing, right? This just shows you my own YouTube channel. I'm featuring my children, my husband's channel. He's got a whopping 7 subscribers. You see that? But Aiden's slowly growing, and look at that, Hamilton Central School Tech, 80. Wow. They better stay on top of me with my 83. So the first thing that I did with Amelia and Noah is I asked them, what is your journey? This was my journey, and how can I help you as a coach, as a teacher, to work on your digital media? And so these were some questions that we started with. Why would you need to create a digital portfolio? Things are you interested in? How to keep track of all the stuff online, things like that. So there's a couple of influencers. On the left, you're seeing Ali Abdal. I no longer follow him, but he was an inspiration to my son Aiden, and he's a huge YouTuber who really has helped a lot of new people getting into YouTube. He's coming out with a book, and so it was very helpful to learn a lot from him digitally. And then this is just one of the first links that I found about podcasting. We will start podcasting soon, but I think we're already kind of doing it in the Night's Nook, coming from Ms. Bossard's students. So hopefully the broadcast and media production course will start soon with that as well. But we've been meeting with Aiden, actually, who's been podcasting for a good while, to get help with that. So as a result of those 10 hours, there's been a lot more hours spent than that to gain the skills that I now have and are still growing. We've been trying and starting to successfully live stream into the forum. And I'm saying starting to, there's been a lot of technical issues, but that's just the way tech nature is. You run into problems, but we're confident that we will solve them, and we will be back live streaming tomorrow morning. So you're just seeing some of the videos of the morning announcements. And then this is our YouTube from Emerald Nights and Tech Club. And so you see on the right there the Runners-Up School Association student video. We're also storing some language week video I see here, previous competitions, news from before, and I see there in the middle for those that can read it. When we had COVID, we were doing an HCS virtual tour, and our students went throughout the building to report things. And so we're storing all that, as well as HCS reads. That's Aiden right there, coincidentally, reading a book to elementary kids. So, and basically with that all in mind, we are featuring our own channel, Hamilton Central School District, the morning announcements, Hamilton Athletics. So that's kind of the idea behind the course that I started. I think that might be it. What this is, probably my last slide, this just shows you the Google Classroom site that I constructed for the course and some of our first assignments that we've been doing to gear up towards what we want to accomplish this year. So I have them journal, I have them start learning about DaVinci Resolve, which is a very good editing program, creating directions for future students, because once seniors leave, and if you have no directions written down, then the knowledge vanishes. So that's very important. The competitions and yeah, things like that you see up there. That's it. Thank you for your funding, and hopefully more to come.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. We're just a pair, so we're support for each other. We put our sides. So I'm Denise Whalen, and I got 8 hours to go into DEI, SEL, like those are all things near and dear to my heart in the art room, and that's what I think art is all about. So these were my goals for the summer, but I kind of just broke it down to think what I wanted to get out of my summer work. I'm going to go through each one individually. So the first 2 were research artists and cultures to include more diversity, equity, and inclusion in the art room. So I want to make sure we're exploring a variety of cultures at every grade level. One thing that I love that I do is Art of the Week, where I put a new artwork up at the beginning of every art class, and I say, what do you see? And then they say all sorts of crazy things. They look at the vocabulary wall too, so they'll say color, line, shapes, but then they'll see I don't know, I see a monster looking out, or it looks like a pirate. We have these great conversations, and I always tell them nobody can be wrong. So I'm trying really hard. I have all these great artworks in there in the cupboard, so I'm trying really hard to make sure I'm getting a lot of cultures represented there. And then art club, last year for the K-2 art club, I did cultures with stations, so I did a different culture, and then they could choose where they went to explore that culture, like choice-based art. I'm actually presenting that on Saturday, so 2 presentations in 1 week. So I did research. My big 3 takeaways from some of the stuff I saw were to share a range of artists, look at open-ended questions, look at art with open-ended questions, and allow personal points of view. So I try to have projects in my room that they can put themselves into a lot. It's not just doing what I say, but we have a lot of room to make it personal. So I made this chart, and I could link to it if we would put it on today, or you could click on the link probably. But I made sure that I added 2 new artists at every grade level, and came up with all sorts of new projects. So it was really fun because I've been in high school for so long, so it's fun half the time to dig in and see what contemporary artists were out there, other artists I didn't know about. If you've ever been in my room, you'll see a lot of whales, because my intro project is to set goals with a whale, because of my last name, so I said it helps remember my name, and we decorate my room with whales. So this artist is from Australia, and her name's Michelle Floor, and I totally want to do this project, because she watercolors whales. So she's Australian, and she did a lot of projects to educate people about the population decreasing of whales. So some kind of art that has a purpose, which I think is really awesome. And then the third goal was to look at the SEL standards and incorporate more social and emotional learning opportunities in the art room. So I developed this worksheet instead of just crazy free draw for my early finishers. They fill out these worksheets with things that are meaningful to them. So that's like my example. So I did fish because my son caught a lot of fish that day. I did a teary face because my stomach was hurting. So I showed them all that. So I said, did you just learn a lot about me? That's what I want this worksheet to be for you. So it's right on the back that it is. And then I have this fabulous prize box. So when they see other people get the prizes, they're like, oh, where's my worksheet? We got 3 today, so it's been really fun. I put them in a clear sleeve and make it really special. We want to explore identity through projects in the art room, so think a lot about themselves. Continue to establish personal connections with the students. I think I have pretty good rapport with them. That's an important thing that all the research said. And one goal I have this year that I haven't done yet, but I need to do, is 1 group project for every grade level to help foster interpersonal skills. So with 5th grade, they're going to actually design a logo and do a how-to draw video, and then we're going to have everybody else do it. Because that was inspired by kids in my room during free time. They were like making a video of how to draw. I said, that's a great project for you. And then SEL recess opportunities. So the picture on the top right are the anti-bullying buttons that each grade level got to come into recess and make. And then that's Tori and my gratitude feather, the new masterpiece that just went out, our gratitude wings, yes. So we made feathers. And that's SEL in our room too, because they took the time to think about what their grade were for the feathers. I updated the existing Tori, has amazing curriculum maps already, but I looked at them and thought about other projects we could do for like Black History Month, Youth Art Month. I did a Faith Ringgold back to school project, so we read a book by Faith Ringgold and they had an open-ended question, where would you fly, who could fly anywhere? And they made little squares, so we saw that fly in my room. There's like, she kind of made quilts, so. I would like to look at Romir Bearden and his collage music instrument collages for Black History Month in February. And I'm a big Youth Art Month person. I get really crazy in March, so we'll do something for Youth Art Month. We're actually each getting a free t-shirt at the conference because we're such good participators in Youth Art Month, so that's really exciting. And I updated the list of artists. 6th grade does a project where they research an artist and then have to make a piece inspired by the artist and then present to a presentation. So I updated that list with some of the new artists I learned. They find some that they teach me about too. So here's the Faith Ringgold mural that we did. And then there's a fabric artist, Allison in here, made that artwork. They had to tell me something about themselves with fabric art, which was really fun for them. There's all these bins of crazy fabric in there. I did photography with 8th grade, which was super fun because I was a photography teacher at Canastota. So we looked at Jessica Sampson. She had a lot of great themes for her work, just black and white photography. So that's just right outside the art room. And then we looked at an artist from Singapore. I can't remember her name, but she did these emotional self-portraits. So my 7th graders did emotional self-portraits this year. And that's it. So it was really fun. I mean, this is an ongoing class for me. It's not over, but what I did learn this summer was really fun.
Any specific questions? Thank you very much.
Where are Oh, no, I'm just kidding. Oh, no, I don't know right now. Do you want to go in order? Is that okay? Okay, perfect. I'll come back.
So we do the technology stuff too.
The clicker. Make sure it's so.
Maybe we should.
Are those clickable links?
Yes, do I have to stand in front of the board?
You'll have to click them then.
On the board?
Yeah.
So I did, you can see it, but I did projects for engagement. Last year, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to engage our new high school students. They're changing, they're shifting, and I wanted to shift with them. So I spent quite a few hours looking up, finding, and developing, and revamping some of my own projects that I've used in the past. Let's see if this actually goes with me.
Yeah, if it were clickable, it would work.
Oh. Worked. It worked on my computer in my room. These were just examples of a few things that I did. We just finished this one. The task was all about A Christmas Carol. They wanted to know how to do slide presentation.
If it doesn't click in presentation mode, I don't think it will click.
Is it a live one or is it like a downloaded one?
No, this is live.
What about that button that I had? Do you see that right top finger thing? Is that affecting it?
Yes.
Finger thing. So this was one thing I found. There we go. When we do book reviews, I wanted them to have choices. So I put together a project board. I found a lot of these out there. This is not new, it's just new to me. And so I gave them some choices on what they could do. They had 6 choices, or they could create their own project. So for example, if you wanted to act it out, which I did encourage, it would take them out to the instructions for that particular project. What to do, where to do it, how to practice, and a pep talk at the end. Use your imagination, have fun, all of that. So each one of these, you could go out, you create a comic book link. Brought us to here, to book creator. I won't take you out there because I have to sign in and I don't think I remember the password. But you can go to book creator, which I have used in the past for picture books, and there are also ways to do comic books. And then I had some students draw their own comic books. And they were reviewing the book basically. And we talked a lot about what a book review does. It sells the book. So we had trailers, we had all sorts of things. And they really enjoyed that. This is one they just got done presenting. It knows that it scares me. Here we go. They had to create a slide presentation. When we got done with the book reviews, I said to them, is there anything you want to learn how to do? And they're like, we want to do slideshows. Okay, Google Slides, here we go. We're going to be reading A Christmas Carol, so I decided to have them give us the background information. Instead of me yapping at them about Victorian England, they went and found out about it, presented their slideshow, and created a note-taking document for the class. We're finishing up this week. Everybody in class has 4 documents of notes about Victorian England, Christmas traditions, A Christmas Carol, and Charles Dickens. So that was in lieu of me saying, "Oh, listen to me here." They got to listen to each other and learn some presentation skills, hopefully. This is one that I revamped when I do Fahrenheit 451. We do a propaganda project. We talk a lot about censorship and propaganda, everything that Ray Bradbury was talking about in the book. And they have to put together facts. They do a persuasive speech. Here's the outline. I'm learning how to put links in documents that can be opened. And some other examples like jumping on the bandwagon. And then they get to choose what their campaign is going to be about. And it has to include certain things. It has to include a political cartoon or a testimonial. You choose your cause and then you convince us that you're right. And then they have to give a persuasive speech. They have to listen to each other's speeches and ask questions. I left out the debate part because rebuttal takes a long time. This activity, we were talking about ironing, and I won't play the music. We all know this game, right? So I set up a slideshow. Now, this isn't a big deal for some people, but it is a big deal for me to do this.
Yes, right now.
Yeah.
And,
Donnie, you want me to bring you the app from us?
that- So they had to write down what irony was, and then we went through and gave them examples, is it dramatic, situation, or verbal? And you can see the different situations. This makes me laugh, because I'm this guy right here. Into the fitness room, the escalator. This is another one. I'm not really sure if it's Coke or Dr. Pepper, but it ain't this. And they were pretty quick to catch on. They thought that was fun. Sarcasm. They enjoy sarcasm now. What lovely weather we're having today. So we talked about, kind of speaks for itself, irony and the different ways. This was much better when we were listening to the music. And then we went through and had the answers. So, again, not a big deal for some people. This was huge for me. Someday I'll know how to make them spin and do fun things. Now I don't know how to get down there. Ah, that's how. So, there you have it. I also had a Kahoot, but I discovered rapidly that this was hard to sign into, and if I'm having this much trouble, I'm not taking it. But this was that and a Jeopardy game. I found a place where you can make Jeopardy. I just went through and kind of went hog wild and wrote down all the stuff and researched and developed, and I'm still developing things. I've got a list of stuff that I haven't finished yet. But thank you very much for supporting this endeavor to learn more about technology and be developing projects that are hopefully more engaging for my classes. This slide looks much better on my computer.
Any questions? Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Tanya Valancourt. This year we were finally able to bring a college course, science credit for the students, and so we were looking at natural disasters. And right along, I'm so excited. Like, are you not so excited? Isn't this lovely weather? It is. So I set out with a bunch of curriculum goals. I wanted to update what was given to me years ago by Brockport, since I hadn't taught it in a while. And in doing so, the SUNY system has changed over their requirements for college students, and no longer do they need 2 sciences, but they only need 1. And in doing so, I'm able to elongate and add new things that isn't originally in the textbook or the curriculum that was given to me. I also want to bring the students out into the field and actually start taking new field work in terms of some of the severe weather that happens around our neighborhood. And I wanted to push myself to expand upon climate change and how to present that with the students to make it more useful, since that's going to be a very hot topic in the future for their lives. So the curriculum was originally created around 2013 and 14 by several grants in SUNY Brockport to be a dual credit course through the high schooling. And then it had been edited in 2018, and that's the version I had received. Working with another colleague, a former classmate of mine who's been teaching this for 8 years over in Batavia, she has not received any updates from the college. So together we have started to discuss what we wanted to work on in the future. The big thing was I haven't taught this course since pre-pandemic, and over the pandemic there's been many links who have been taken down because of copyright, or there was a thing called Flash Player that no longer is a thing, and so there goes a ton of my lab, all my labs that I've been working with, and even just demonstrations. So I needed to sit down and find the resources that I used to have that no longer is offered. And natural disasters happen every day, so needing to update what have happened in the last several years since when either the textbook was given or the curriculum was originally made. So one of the topics that is touched but not really gone into is wildfires. And if you recall, June was also lovely weather, seeing that we couldn't even see or breathe through the air. And that's going to be something that we need to think about, seeing that climate is showing that it's getting warmer and warmer. So I worked on adding a whole new unit and adding that in on wildfires and what causes them, what we can do to help mitigate them, and just learning about wildfires in general, because that wasn't something that was covered. I'm also adding in a whole winter unit. Nothing has been touched about winter, mainly because that's something we already experience. So I wanted to bring in blizzards, ice storms, winter weather in general. And in doing so, I've worked on creating, and we're going to be presenting a field trip where I'll be taking the kids up into the Adirondacks in the middle of winter. I have several people that are coming to present about the history of the Adirondacks and those winter sessions, as well as the meteorology behind winter storms, ice storms, and any significant events. We're also going to be taking a look at snow cores that are in the snow that's right there, so we'll be able to take a look and see real-world measurements and create our own data. So that's the goal of our future field trip that I will be presenting soon. And finally, like I said, I want to touch upon climate change, not just that it is what it is, but looking more to the history of climate change. I think our students at this point, especially with the new next generation science standards that are coming through, I think it's important to not just know what it is, but now go into how to have conversations about it. So what I wanted to do is take a look at how government has viewed climate change today, 20 years ago, and when we first got our first laws in terms of the Clean Water Act, etc. And I want to see how things have developed so that our students can then leave Hamilton with a better base of how to have climate discussions and potential future laws, and where we need to go in our future. Pretty much it. So thank you again for this opportunity for you to update this.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Celia and Vicki and I work together with our middle school investigations and our new curriculum. It is currently now in effect this year for the new science standards, and we kind of looked and saw that meteorology was kind of, with the reshifting of 5 through 8 to 6 through 8, we found that meteorology was kind of missed. So we took this summer to specifically explore, create a unit, and focus on the lab investigation, which is one of the 4 required labs for students to be able to sit and take their 8th grade state assessment. We sat down and we kind of took a look at what is the lab, what is the content they need to know, what is the standards, and kind of put everything together in that. So we looked at these standards. These were just a clipping of the weather and climate. As you can see, this is how pre-K through 12 has been aligned. So trying to look at the cross-cutting concepts, the DCIs, and the SEPs, and connecting it all in and how we can present it with the next generation standards in play.
All right, so like Tanya mentioned, we really began by looking at the standards and looking at the investigations, and we really tried to pull out what concepts, what skills, what vocabulary the students need to know to master the standards and see proficiency on the investigation. So we pulled all those out, we made a list, and we put our list in order to really help build some broad knowledge and kind of build upon that as the curriculum went on. And we also went in and saw, is there anything that's kind of missing in there? Anything that's not specifically spelled out in the standards or specifically tested on the investigation, but that students would still need to know in our curriculum to be able to meet those standards and those investigations. So once we had our unit in order, we went about creating a slideshow that really comprehensively included our whole curriculum, starting off with all the different notes the students were doing, examples, lots of maps, videos, and some practice problems as well. We also took a look at some past 8th grade state tests and pulled in meteorology questions from those to use as formative assessments and examples. A lot of the meteorology unit involves looking at maps. We really started at how do you read a map? What are the different elements of a map? And then as we went through each of the different weather factors that our unit covered, we started looking at more and more complex maps and help students understand how do you read those maps to tell what the weather currently is, and how do you use what we know about weather, air mass movement, fronts, high and low pressure, etc., to predict what weather is going to be in certain areas as the time goes on. Once we had our slideshow completed, we created a notes packet to go alongside it. We created fill-in-the-blank notes for all of our content knowledge and vocabulary. We also included all those same practice problems and worksheets that were on the slides so that it could really all be in one place, help students and us with organization, and really go through the unit kind of comprehensively. Once we were done with all that, we went back to the standards, back to the investigations, and took a look and said, okay, did what we created meet the needs of the standards, meet the needs of the investigations, and we kind of adjusted any vocabulary or added any additional things. So we felt, still needed to be done. And then the last thing we did at the end of our hours is we sat down and made a list of what do we still want to do, what kind of additional worksheets, practice, quizzes, tests, homework, accommodations, modifications, etc. What we want to do, we kind of delineated it out. Each of us, we really start the school year knowing what else did each of us need to work on to keep making this curriculum.
Where are we going? What have we done so far? So we are all currently in our meteorology unit right now. So 6th, 7th, 8th grade is all working on this right now so that we are all implemented at the same time. And we're going to be moving into implementing the first lab investigation here shortly. We have attended some PD sessions, but we hope to attend more as they come out that dive deeper into the lab investigations as they come out. And in the future, we hope to ask for more hours to look at the other lab investigations because there are 3 more that we do have to cover in order for the 8th graders to sit for the science state test at the end of the year. So we want to look at those other lab investigations in a more deep way so that we make sure that all of the content and all of the standards that we are covering as fast as possible within our curriculum. And I think that was about it. Any questions? I just want to say that really awesome shift was like literally everything we did. Yes. Oh, sorry. I like to play it. But I don't like
I wouldn't beat you.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for your time and providing us with the opportunity to describe what we're going to hopefully pursue over the course of the next year, which is the Humanities Fair, and a project that we wanted to revive thanks to the great Kathy Sabino, Ian Jerome, and Warren here. So this was a project that you worked on for a few years. It went away for a couple. We wanted to bring it back. So we were focusing on creating an interdisciplinary 9th grade project that combines social studies, English, and the arts. Our goal is to engage students in exploring some historical time periods and events and provide them with the opportunity to do some in-depth research on things that they find interesting. So instead of me just providing curriculum, they actually get to go in and investigate and find cool things regarding the Ottoman Empire or the Ming Dynasty or classical India or whatever they kind of want to explore. So our hope is that we'll be able to develop a better understanding of these historical contexts. It will sharpen investigation and research skills and critical thinking, which today with media and thinking about where students are getting their news, this will really allow them to consider things like corroboration, contextualization, bias. And the project will culminate into the creation of a narrative that students are able to make from the perspective of a cultural object. So, for example, a piece of silk from China that's traveling along the Silk Road. So we're kind of talking about the cultures that they're interacting with and seeing the different ways in which humans interact with culture and what those connections kind of look like. So our objectives that we've kind of presented to the ninth graders already, thinking about what we would like to get out of this project would be obviously extensive research, right, including things like causes, key figures, the impact on society, global implications, but also thinking about how like, this history can connect with their lives today, right? Because so many times as a history teacher, I get questions like, why are we studying this, right? Like, this is in the past, what does the Ottoman Empire have to do with my life today? But it actually does, you know, they are able to make those realizations as we move through the units, and it's pretty awesome to see that happen. So we're hoping kind of the same thing happens with this project as well. And with the investigation, being able to critically analyze primary and secondary sources, really thinking about things like bias, perspective, corroborating sources, credibility, relevance, like all of these things that we try to do in the social studies classroom and in English classrooms as well, in order to really understand different perspectives and to kind of come up with an idea as to what these different perspectives actually mean when it comes to telling history. So do you want to talk a little bit from there?
Sure. I was talking. So what do you do with the information when you gather it? In this case, we're going to take it and develop a narrative of the travel. You're the piece of silk, you're on the Silk Road, what happens, what do you see, what do you hear, who are you with, all of those things into a creative narrative. There's not a lot of creative writing that honestly takes place in regular ELA classroom, because we're all like primarily focused on, we've got these kinds of things to do when you get to 11th grade for the regions, or when you're in 8th grade and 7th grade for the ELA testing. But creativity is one of the most important things we can give our kids. We can allow them to exercise that creativity. And doing it by looking at other cultures and looking at the history of cultures, we can create a narrative, and the way they do that, very simply, is to write a story. People's stories are important. And so we're going to help them learn how to create a story that has more than just 2 dragons and a princess, or things like that. Those are wonderful stories too, don't get me wrong, I read those all the time. But this is a little deeper and a little meatier for them. And with that, we're talking about communication skills, and not just in reading and writing, and not just in research, but in presentation, in public speaking. Again, not something that gets really looked into much more than, okay, we're going to, what I did when I showed you before, we're going to do a slideshow, or we're going to do this. This becomes a much more public way for them to come together with other people. The community comes in, we have this fair, and you come and you see their work. And that, for them, I think, will be very exciting. To have people, they're scared already. They really are. Do we wear a costume?
No, they do
Yes,
8th grade.
Of course they do. Of course they do. Why am I saying no? I have the costume. But historical perspective is also important.
Yeah, so with the historical perspective, again, providing students with an opportunity to look at history and create a story through multiple perspectives, right? Because, as we're all very familiar, history has a lot of different interpretations and perspectives. What those trading routes look like for somebody living in India might be very different from someone living in Constantinople or Istanbul, right? So think about the historical perspective and providing students with an opportunity to look at history through multiple lenses in order to really start to appreciate culture a little bit more deeply. And then with the hands-on creating part, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Okay.
So my role is that the kids will also be making like an artifact or piece, or essentially the object that they are seeing the lens of history through. So it could be a journal, it could be, like we said, a piece of silk, it could be a piece of pottery, maybe a sculpture of a tool, or a painting that tells a story. So my role is to help facilitate the brainstorming of like what artifacts should we create, how to create it, what materials will be needed. It's very much the artistic process that I feel like a lot of times in art class I'm kind of giving them that, and this time it will be for them to kind of decide and go through on their own. It'll include the process of revising and adjusting, so if things aren't working out the way they thought it would, how can we change to get the product that we want, until both the artist and I feel that it's complete and the best it could be. I don't have 8th grade, and actually I don't have all of the 9th grade, so my plan is to host them in what I call open studio time. So right now I have that as art club on Tuesdays, 3 times a month, and then in January I'm going to make it weekly through April, so that every week they'll be able to come in, they'll have an hour to work, and then also I always welcome kids during study hall time too, if after school is difficult for them. And then I created a grading rubric that will help Donna, Mike, and Emily with grading the artwork.
So our timeline, which we've actually created a timeline, which we're really happy to share with you, but starting after Thanksgiving break, we would like to do a topic selection, so that's going to be my area, so students will be, looking at different, just kind of exploring, provide them with a lot of different sources that they can go and kind of look at. We actually have a template of a lot of different options that students are able to check from, and they'll be able to check that out. Research and investigation will also be happening in my classroom, where we'll be crafting an annotated bibliography, and a series of note cards that kind of answer the who, what, when, where, why questions. And investigation, again, kind of think about how do these sources line up, how do they differ, what are the different sort of perspectives that we're seeing, and that will all hopefully wrap up into their narrative development.
And that starts, really the process starts in January as well. They've had some investigation. I'll be introducing them to different types of literature and travel stories. We'll be reading parts of Gilgamesh, we'll be reading the Odyssey, I have picture books, I have all kinds of really cool stories, including a couple of stories written. One is called I Obelisk. It's an Egyptian obelisk that has been dug up and is being moved, and it talks about its history from the perspective of where am I now. So that's a possibility for them too. And the whole writing process, which some people think, oh, I'm going to write a novel. No. We're going to talk about how you develop your ideas, how do you organize your ideas, where does the creativity come in? Well, all through the process. So here's how that's going to work for you. We'll be doing rough drafts. We'll be doing a final draft before the Humanities Fair, April 4th. Mark your calendars now. And then how that writing process brings them to this artifact and how these things intertwine. When we did this before, we called it the Travelogue Project. I kind of like what we're calling it better, the Humanities Fair, because we're sharing it with 8th grade. This is the 9th grade. Sometimes a tough time to get their attention. So hopefully this will be part of that process.
And then as Tori already discussed, the visual enhancement, so creating an artifact that kind of represents their research process and the narrative that they're writing. And then finally, the presentation evaluation would be kind of like a science fair, but it's a humanities fair where we kind of get to celebrate the arts and English and writing, and just for, students to be proud of what they developed over the course of a few months. So we don't have to go through all of these, but these are kind of some of the expected outcomes that Amy, Tori, Donna, and myself kind of came up with. Understanding obviously that specific historical event, but also enhancing critical reading and writing skills, narrative skills, communication, obviously because of presentations, things like that. We really wanted to create this interdisciplinary thing because, we always talk so much about how what we do kind of mirrors what we do in each other's classroom, but this is actually giving us the opportunity to actually put out something and provide students with an opportunity to create something again that they're very proud of. So, and something that was funny that we were kind of discussing the other day is that we were looking at our respective standards and realized that so many of these overlap. So it just kind of fit together in a way that really allowed for us to, really take a hold of this project.
And this is only 4 of the standards that actually fit this project. I didn't want to give you all 27,000, which also overlap in themselves and come into social studies as well. There are several places where we could actually teach a class together and get all of that put together.
Yeah, and I was surprised to see too. And I was surprised, write narratives to understand an event or topic appropriate to disciplines, specific norms, conventions, tasks. It's like this project is just, it hits that right on the nose. So We were very pleasantly surprised to find that our standards
Doesn't always happen.
pretty well.
And my job was to do what I'm about to do right now. On task, spin through the next theory. Oh, no, we're good, we're good. I get the idea. Why are we doing this? You know why we're doing this.
She also brought us a lot of resources to use for it.
My job is really to keep them moving along and to keep them focused on the project.
Okay, so in Amy's fashion, I'm next. So I'm kind of like the beginning building blocks of this humanities fair, where we're going to do Night of the Notables in the eighth grade social studies curriculum. And they will be presenting their living history notable on April 4th at the humanities fair. So this is a quote that they're going to be presented with when they start to figure out who they would like to research as their notable person, someone who has made a difference to humanity. And presenting that quote to the students, I'm hoping that we can get multiple perspectives of different people within American history that they can embody and present to the community and family and friends. So it's going to be introduced in January. They're going to be working on it in the second, third, fourth quarters. And really the main focus is this last paragraph down here. It's the aims of this project, working on the historical thinking skills, corroborating sources, contextualization, sourcing, and just their communication skills when they present, but also their studying practice and their researching practices, as well as kind of expanding their creativity. So my job with middle schoolers is to really kind of give them this nice organized plan, but within that plan, kind of let them run with it. So this is our projected due dates for this project with different benchmarkings or checkpoints along the way. And then, I don't know if this will work, but hopefully, each student will be given a, it is a student workbook that they will have access to digitally with each step of the process, with checkpoints, due dates, what they should be doing, how to research, working with in-text citations, works cited, thesis development, all of those parts of research. The curriculum standards, it's like 2 pages of social studies and English standards. The rubric, how they're going to be evaluated at each due date for what they're producing. And then a checklist in their workbook that they can mark complete as they've completed each step along this project. The presentation at the Humanities Fair will be them being this living historical person that they've chosen. It could be someone who's passed away or someone who is currently living, where they're embodying that person, answering questions from the community as that person, and really demonstrating their knowledge about someone who they have felt passionate about, or a historical time period that they have felt passionate about in U.S. history. So that's my part of the humanities fair, and then this is just kind of laying the groundwork for 9th grade when they have that global perspective. Thank you.
We had an assembly today, we did not dress alike on purpose. But these are our shirts, have you seen our shirts?
Okay, this summer, Melissa and I, the BOE Social Studies curriculum that we are all currently using. Our focus is to create a calendar allowing us to alternate science and social studies units.
You didn't give this.
I did a whole bunch of people access to it, so that's good.
It's okay, it's not gonna, it's
Is that
because
for
of,
you, Morgan?
this is Bill. He's so good. Barnes.
All right, so in case this happens, I don't
Okay, so this is the calendar that we created to allow us to alternate science and social studies units. We We also located fiction and nonfiction mentor text to engage students in teaching unit vocabulary. We added project-based learning opportunities like field trips, Google Slides with presentations, and a project to help in our community. We also looked at our ELA units to align it to social studies where possible. We were able to locate mentor text from our ELA curriculum that students have become familiar with and could relate to in explaining some of the social studies concepts.
So as I went through one school year of teaching the social studies curriculum, I found that most of the texts that were included in it looked like this. We'll just kind of have you pass that down. And so not really that engaging, but definitely serves a purpose. The students are able to read that and answer the questions and then go back in and highlight the text, which is a skill that moving out of second grade we want them to be able to do, but just not really that engaging when you're 7, and when you see it, you'll see why we found that. So we decided to go and look for some more authentic texts that were engaging for and related to the content. We could teach the content vocabulary through. So the first book up here, What a Waste, is about recycling, and since we teach about how to help our community through recycling, we found this colorful book all about how to protect and help your community. Look Where We Live is a first book of community building about working together in your community. Also much more engaging than just reading the text without any pictures. And then Come On Rain is, so we have a mixture kind of fiction and nonfiction that we looked for. Come On Rain is fiction. It's about a little girl that lives with her grandmother in an apartment in an urban setting. And it's a really hot one. They're way up in this apartment complex, how they're just really hoping it'll rain so they can go out and play. And it really gives great description of what the city smells like and what people are doing on these really hot days, and it's very different from where we live. So we get into some really great discussions with books like that. I just recently read A Park Connects Us. It's about Central Park and how everybody can come together in this beautiful green space, even though they live in a city that's very busy and loud and crowded. And just having these type of books versus the text that came with the curriculum really allows for some rich discussions, and the kids are much more engaged and excited about looking at these books. And then as we went through this, we discovered that many of the books that we use in our ELA program, we could also use to discuss the content vocabulary for social studies. So Evelyn Del Rey is Moving Away. It's about a little girl who has her best friend, and Evelyn, that is moving away, and they live in an urban area. And so it just kind of gives a glimpse into what their life in the city is like. Anita and the Dragons is about a little girl who lives in a very rural part of the Dominican Republic, and her family is moving to Miami. And so we get into great discussions about that. So we can talk now about our content during ELA, which was kind of a goal that I had last year when I thought, how can we incorporate these two things together? Emma Every Day is another book that talks about a little girl who lives in a rural area, and so we really can connect with that. And also, each of these books has very diverse characters. So Emma actually has cochlear implants, and so we talked about disabilities and how Emma actually uses American Sign Language, and we talked about that as a language. And so at the same time, we're talking about that diverse people within our community. And then You Can Be an Entomologist is another book where we can talk about different jobs in our community, different jobs that people can have. And just kind of, there's many, many more that we put in there, but we went through and took all of the vocabulary out of the units and looked at different books where we could have more engaging texts that the kids would use. And then, so some of the projects that we do that also were not within the social studies curriculum that we use through BOCES, we decided to put in a Google Slides presentation on urban, suburban, and rural communities as a culminating project to our first unit. And Chris is actually coming in to teach how to use Google Slides, and then the students will put together a project on communities. And They will then present that project to the class, and we had to create a rubric that goes along with that project. They're going to be doing a brochure of Hamilton, why that people should come and visit Hamilton after we do a walking tour and talk about all of the awesome things that our community has, and then we have to create a rubric that is goes along with that project. And then let's see what other. There's some great history at the library that we can go and see the history exhibit there. So we plan on doing that when we talk about the history of our community. And then we plan at the end of the year to have a project where the kids come up with a way to help our community after we talk about different issues facing people that live in our community. They'll come up with a project where they'll be able to help others that live in our community. So, thank you. Yes? Any questions? Thank you. And then we all creating a curriculum, and it was so much fun, and I learned a lot, but now I need a map because I needed to see what it all looks like. So this is some student work so far from this year, and I just love it, and I love all of it, and everything. So starting from scratch, I began by referencing the New York State Visual Arts Standards. So I actually went to a conference like a few years ago where they gave us like the updated standards, and they're really nice, and I can see like these are all the high school proficient, accomplished, and advanced. So there's pages and pages that I know directly to look right there. So the goals for me were to follow the same format that I created for pre-K through 8, and Denise updates that constantly, which is so wonderful, but I thought it would be nice in a district our size that it all flowed together and looked similar for parents who have kids, going throughout all of the school. The next was to be sure that I'm meeting the New York State standards with my curriculum. I wanted to be sure that I was meeting the individual needs of our students. I wanted to make sure that my curriculum met the overall goals of the district. And then I wanted to create a visual map of the order in which to take classes. So like Studio 1, 2, 3 is easy, but there's like non-prerequisite classes. So you could take photography without taking Studio 1, or art and industry, which is a new course I've done this year. And I think having the map also we kind of switch off what classes are offered each year so that students who are on like a 5-art course plan for their 4 years of high school can take different classes on their transcript. So that way, because I have Studio 1, 2, 3, and if I offer that every year, it would have to overlap. So now we have advanced drawing and painting and mixed media, photography, media arts, art and industry. So to have that as like a collection is really helpful. This is the rainbow curriculum map that I love so much that I created, so it's giving art teacher. And it looks the same, so the top rainbow part is the same for elementary, middle, and now high school, so that meant a lot to me. All of the things were like units of study, the standards, essential questions, enduring understandings, the materials and processes, and the terminology, and then that way I could link the full-length thing on the curriculum map document that we have on the HTS website, because there was not one there. So this was not the most like fun and exciting thing I've ever done, but it is nice when you look at it. So lastly, I'm like, okay, so now I'm going and looking through it, and I'm like, oh dear, I think maybe we're lacking here, but I have a lot of this here. So I think I wrote, continuously reflecting on where the arts program may be lacking and adjusting my curriculum to be the best that it could be. So some ideas for this year were a focus on diversity and inclusivity after talking to Denise about all the wonderful research she did. So introducing more modern and local artists. I have a parent who's a pottery artist in town. I actually was just at dance before I came here with my daughter, and the woman sitting next to me is a stained glass artist. And I was like, do you want to visit? That was really cool.
Introducing more artists with disabilities, introducing more artists of color and artists with different cultural backgrounds, experimenting with more varieties of materials that I'm less comfortable with and knowledgeable about, so like stained glass, I've never done that before, but it sounds awesome. I would like to get more involved with like the greater community, so Hamilton and beyond, we do a few art shows in different, areas beyond Hamilton, but I'm trying to work on, growing. And how can I connect with other academic curriculums, which is great to work with Mike, Donna, Emily, and Amy this year, to broaden student learning and make connections. And throughout this process, I'm typing all this stuff and I'm like, I'm probably going to change this in like 2 years. So it's just one of these things where I'm like, this is going to be a career-long thing, because every time you learn, you're like, oh yes, this is, I'm going to do this and add this. So yes, it was very fun to make those maps. Very happy they are complete. Any questions? Thank you guys for supporting us so much.
Okay, so introduction to cooking. Obviously, you all know we have this beautiful new kitchen. So I had to create a class, and it's a 20-week class for 9th graders through 12th graders. This slide, the most important thing is at the bottom. They're obviously going to learn basic cooking skills, but on top of that, some of the things that we don't like to do but have to do is we need to learn how to clean the kitchen. We need to learn how to wash dishes properly, safety and first aid when we're using knives, when we're using pots and pans. But the most important thing is the last one, which is failure is part of the learning experience. And I really try to work with the kids to say, not everything's going to come out the way you thought it would. It's not going to look like the picture, and that's okay. That's part of the learning process when you're in the kitchen. So some of the things that I needed to create for the class, this is just a list of some of the documents. So obviously we have to have some safety rules. I needed to find out about the kids, so I created some surveys, one about their cooking experience. The other thing that's important when you have a class, you want to find out who can they work with, who should they work with, and maybe somebody who they shouldn't work with. That isn't going to be a good fit for them. And then I had to create a shopping list, because there are times when I have to go to Price Chopper to get supplies. So when they're creating, or they're looking at a recipe, they have to put all the ingredients and amounts on the shopping list, so that I can take the shopping list and figure out what I have to get and what we have in the pantry or the refrigerator. The other thing that was important for this class is also taking a minute to actually read through your recipe and figure out what's all the equipment that I need when I go to prepare this. So they get all of that equipment out before they actually start the process. And then obviously some rubrics for when they work in the kitchen. I created some projects for the kids to do in the 20 weeks that I have them. Sometimes if I have one group cooking and the other group has some downtime, I needed something for them to work on that was meaningful. So I created, there's something called the Magnificent Seven, and that's just really create a one-pager on the function of things like flour and sugar and eggs when you bake. What do all those things do? Meal planning, they have to plan 3 meals, find recipes, grocery list, cost, a recipe card project, and then meal planning, and then eating out project versus eating at home. The cost differences and the health benefits of both. So this is kind of our first unit, because I thought it was the most important thing, that since we're going to be using knives, they probably should learn how to use them safely. So we kind of watch a video that's a basic video on knife skills, and then we talk about it, and then we go into the kitchen, and they actually use the knives and cut through flour, because they can see how their knife cuts through the flour. Are they making even cuts, or are they, kind of jagged or uneven? So we do that for a little while before we get into carrot, celery, and garlic. But once they practice those, we actually bag those up, and we use them later in the year. We're going to make stock, so we'll use the things that they cut up to learn how to make stock. The garlic, is our next unit. After we go through and we practice, we make guacamole and salsa. They can choose one or the other. So some other nice skills that they work on are cutting up herbs and covers. They also will learn to use the vegetable choppers, the immersion blenders, all the other equipment that we have in the kitchen. We get to kind of start using those things to make. I swear I had a salsa. I didn't. I'm lying to you. I thought I had a salsa and a guacamole slide. I do not. So they do some more practice with knives and some of the other kitchen. This is probably a really important unit, probably one of the most important, because I think kids tend to think they know how to read a recipe, and what I'm finding is that's actually a skill set, that you can't just read through the ingredients and those all go in all at one time. So that's one of the things we're working on right now a little bit more depth, is reading a recipe card. So we kind of talk a little bit about when I'm making sauce versus when I'm making a cookie, what's the difference between reading those two recipes. And then we talk about measuring ingredients and all the important things that go along with that. You guys were able to try their mini crumb cakes. So that was one of their first baking endeavors. Thanks. Seasonal fruits. So this class meets for 20 weeks. So in the fall, we're doing apples. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with the spring class, but we'll work on this idea of using seasonal fruits to create either, in this case, applesauce or apple desserts, which they got to choose a recipe, and then they, whatever that seasonal fruit is, they incorporated that into a recipe. What else? So this is the unit we're currently on, so they're learning to just create a simple pasta sauce, and then they'll learn the basics of cooking pasta properly, and then we'll mush the two together, and they get to have their pasta and sauce for lunch. This is our next, after pasta and sauce, we'll work on eggs. So obviously, safe handling, cracking, having an egg or cutting an egg in half when you need it to bake, separating, and then we'll go into different ways of using eggs. Then we'll work on some breakfast skills, salads, so we'll get into seasonal vegetables. They'll create a simple salad. Then we'll take a look at dressings, again, homemade versus store-bought. We'll talk about the cost, taste differences, and we'll look at the ingredient label of the store-bought salad dressings and compare it to what we create in the kitchen. Then we'll do cupcakes and frosting, which will be a fan favorite, I'm sure. We'll get into cooking ground beef. This will be a fairly longer unit because we want to make sure that they're handling the meat safely. We'll talk about cooking temperatures, and then they'll create a burger recipe, which I'm pretty sure Mr. LePage is looking forward to. And then these are just some of the other topics that we'll cover. The soup stock I already talked about. Taking a grilled cheese sandwich and fancying it up a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'd like to cook chicken. I'm not sure we'll get to that point, but cookies are getting moved into early December because they want to do a cookie exchange. So we're going to find some basic cookie recipes, and then they'll bake them, and then we'll exchange them with everybody else in the class. And then pizza and potatoes. That is pretty much it in a nutshell. Any questions? It is, it's a lot. I'm getting my steps in.
Thank you all very much. I know that staying late's, a thing, and we appreciate the time that you put into all of these projects, but also into presenting to us so that we know what you're doing and get a little insight into your classrooms, know what you're teaching the kids. So thank you very much. Yes, we have a full meeting ahead of us, but we've put presentations in the beginning on purpose. You are more than welcome to stay, and we would love you to, but you're also welcome to leave. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, she's really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, everybody can stay for a minute. Sorry.
Just a minute.
One thing.
Sorry.
One thing. Yeah,
Sorry.
we'll do one item and then we can.
My fault, sorry.
So we've already announced this publicly, but it's such an important recognition. I thought it was worthy of recognizing Dr. Helfand from the board and publicly. You may or may not be aware, but on November 4th, at the On Center in Syracuse, Dr. Helfand was awarded the Science Teacher Association of New York State's Excellence in Teaching Award. And there were, I want to get this straight, there were 765 attendees. This was the only high school level excellence award for the entire state of New York. So really important, really proud of you. Congratulations. And
Brought my award.
okay.
I was asking for it.
Look at that.
Wow. Anyway, thank you.
Terrific.
And now I need. All right, well, that was a wonderfully done presentation section. Now on to business. The consent agenda, I need a motion for 4.1 through 5.1.
Move.
Second. Any discussion on treasurer's report, consideration of claims, transportation report, cafeteria report? It's not really.
Should it be 5.1 through 5.6?
Yeah. 5.1 through 5. I'm reading them on my thing. So treasurer's report, consideration of claims, transportation report, cafeteria report, budget calendar, and tax collector report. Any questions? Anything we need to talk about before any? All those in favor? Policies, we've got some second reads here, so we need a motion to approve the following policies as recommended by the policy committee and the superintendent. It's policy number 6300 and 8200. Policy committee, anything?
No, this was the second read.
No changes.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Did we move?
Oh,
That's it.
It's in the consent agenda.
well, that was part of the,
Yep.
that was part of the consent.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, you're right. See, the numbers were messed up, so I got messed up. So anyways, they were approved before we got to them. My bad on reading. But that does bring us to the community participation. And we're inviting people to speak at this time about comments regarding the agenda topics. We do have another community participation at the end of the meeting for general participation, but at this point, we've decided to make a change so that hopefully we can help maybe get to some of the questions that people have if it's regarding the agenda topics at this time. Anybody? I'm just checking on mine. There we go. So. Good.
Go late, I guess.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the recommendation of the committees of special education and preschool education. Any discussion would be done in executive session. All those in favor? Need a motion to accept the following monetary donations with sincere appreciation and to increase the budget by the amounts recommended by the business manager and superintendent. Any discussion?
Thank you.
All those in favor? Discussion, so over to the policy committee. We have 4 policies.
So these were sent directly to us. We didn't have a chance to meet about these, but they're kind of pressing. We saw that there's no major changes, at least that we have, but we still have a chance before the second reading to make any changes to it. It's not a big part to get these to you. For the first reading, quickly, or I guess Bill.
Yeah, the opioid overdose policy, we have had some staff who are interested trained by Madison County. We have Narcan kits here. They're in our policy. There's 5 locations throughout the building. So once this policy is approved, we will then put the Narcan out in the building for use for the people who are trained.
You guys will give us any changes for the second reading?
Yeah, but also if any of you reading these have any changes to send in, send it in. For a second.
Anything on the 2 English ones?
That's the same.
Same thing. All right, any other discussion on those? Motion to approve Hamilton's participation in the following combined sports programs for the 23-24 school year as recommended by the athletic director and superintendent. Wrestling with Morrisville, varsity wrestling, varsity ice hockey with Casanova, and girls varsity lacrosse with Casanova. 1 student, 4 students, 1 student respectively. Motion? Discussion?
Thank you for putting the number of students in there because you knew we were going to have.
Good luck to all of them. All those in favor? A motion to approve Hamilton's partnership with Waterville Central School for 23-24 season for indoor varsity track program as recommended by the athletic director and the superintendent. The Hamilton team will be participating and attending meets with Waterville under the supervision of their coach as a volunteer coach. Tentatively,
Move.
second. And discussion, this is different because it is actually our own team. And so that's why it's a different motion here.
Yeah, indoor track, they don't combine, they partner. It's just their bylaws. So it's a partnership and not a combination. So that allows our students to wear Hamilton uniforms, be a Hamilton team, but be coached by the Waterville coach who was approved by their board.
And last year we only had 1, so
Yeah.
quadruple the number.
All those in favor? A motion to approve Matthew Hull as a substitute as recommended by the administrative team and superintendent. Discussion would be an executive session. All those in favor? And the superintendent's report.
This is a big one, so I actually wrote, and I'm going to read it because the Blue Ribbon Commission from New York State was put together to look at graduation measures. And there's a lot of discussion about, are the Regents exams still valid? Are they a valid tool to require graduation from New York State? So the state put together, as we heard in NISBA, this Blue Ribbon Commission. On Monday, they met with the Board of Regents to propose their recommendations. And I will read these because they're very important and there's a lot here. The Graduation Measures Initiative sought to explore what it means to obtain a diploma in New York State and what that diploma should signify to ensure educational excellence and equity for all students in New York State. Building on the New York State Board of Regents and the department's shared commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and with a foundation rooted strongly in the culturally responsive, sustaining education framework, the initiatives was developed to create equity in New York State public education and ensure New York students gain the knowledge and skills necessary to succeed in future endeavors. Guided by research, stakeholder feedback, and their expertise and experiences, the Blue Ribbon Commission on Graduation Measures identified high-level skills, knowledge areas, and competencies that holistically reflect successful outcomes of P-12 education. The recommendations are, there's 12 of them, replace the 3 diploma types with 1 diploma with the option to add seals and endorsements. Include civic responsibility, ethics, cultural competence, financial literacy, education, fine and performing arts, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, writing, including writing skills for real-world scenarios and diploma credit requirements. Number 3, ensure access to career and technical education, including internships and work-based learning opportunities for all students across New York State. Number 4, move to a model that organizes credit requirements, including content area credit requirements, into larger categories. Mathematics and science courses could be included into the STEM category. Number 5, reduce and/or modify diploma assessment requirements to allow more assessment options. Number 6, create state-developed rubrics for any performance-based assessments allowed as an option to satisfy the diploma assessment requirements. Number 7, create more specific, tailored graduation requirements to address the unique circumstances of certain groups of students. Examples, non-compulsory age students, newcomer students, or refugee students. Number 8, provide exemptions from diploma assessment requirements for students with significant cognitive disabilities in major life events and extenuating circumstances. Some examples, medical conditions, death of a family member, trauma prior to sitting for a required exam. Number 9, pursue regulatory changes to allow the discretion to confer high school degrees posthumously. Number 10, require all New York State teacher prep programs to provide instruction in culturally responsive, sustaining education practices and pedagogy. Number 11, require that professional development plans include culturally responsive, sustaining education practices and pedagogy. And 12, review and revise the New York State learning standards. So those are the 12 recommendations from the Commission that the Board of Regents heard on Monday. I attended that meeting virtually. The Regents were very open and receptive to these. They're going to meet in the coming months. They'll work to develop proposed guidance, programmatic and regulatory changes to address the goals and priorities of the Regents related to this initiative. So they're hoping to take action in the spring with some regulations and some guidance in New York State. Really important work, and I think it's a huge historical shift for New York State education. And I think our leaders will agree, much overdue, and there's some really good recommendations in here to move and to create more opportunities for students for career and college readiness. So it's really important. Really good work by the Commission.
And I wonder what the discussion you've heard of any on exemptions for students is and certain things. I think sometimes that's used as a bit of a crutch, right, for instead of providing students with the structures they need to succeed, oh, we'll exempt you out of this, and then you won't have to do it. But it really just deprives the student of a chance to learn from the subject. Works for me, it's a lot of that centers around
Yeah, I think we
language requirements.
Yep.
And students with some kind of learning difference being, oh, you can't do this, so don't do it. I think it sends a wrong message to the student. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the Commission heard those concerns. They took those into account. There's no specific verbiage on exemptions in here. I think the language exemptions may continue. There's a lot of exemptions for COVID. Those will go away. And the different pathways, I think, will help eliminate some of those exemptions.
And is that set more at is this at the education department level, those exemptions are set, or are they set in law?
Education, the education department.
So that's where, and all these graduation programs are set.
Correct.
It just has to go through the legislature.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything you guys want to add?
I was just wondering, you said that they were going to meet in the spring. Could this affect this year's?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, when we think take it back, probably.
Hard to say.
I'd be surprised if we started.
Potentially next school year, I don't know. It depends on how long.
Fast too.
There's a lot of work to be done still as far as regulations, and I don't know.
An immediate thing that I think
could happen. And students would be able to start to move time into their own goals and interests and not be pulled across an exam that they need in order to graduate.
I don't know if the regents will completely disappear. I think that may be a pathway for some students. It'll be interesting to see how state ed and the Board of Regents kind of sift through that.
And sometimes this idea that you're talking about.
The seals that are starting us.
Yeah.
I know we have similar thing with the civil literacy, is something we kind of have all the folks that aren't really doing like this at a time to try to come to ready for students to do.
It's a real step in the right direction.
Anything else on Bill's report? Any questions for the administrators that are here, or that you'll take back to the other administrators for those reports? Thank you, everybody, for writing that. They're very helpful for us. So I know we don't always have a lot of questions, but we do appreciate the time today. And athletics was part of Mark's. Anything specific for you?
I do, yes.
All right. Sit over there waiting.
With the budget calendar now approved, I'll kind of revert back to my normal bearer of bad news probably for the next 4 to 5 months. So with good news, I want to get as much out of this as possible. But with the CEP program, we are officially approved.
CEP,
Community eligibility division for free lunches and breakfast.
Okay, just making sure.
Friday, December 1st.
Yay!
Right. So it's really exciting. We wanted to announce it tonight at the board meeting. We will be sending out correspondence to all of our families tomorrow. I want to give a lot of credit to Andrea Cass and her crew in the cafeteria, BOCES in the Regional Information Center and their staff. So if you recall in October, when I stood up here, I had talked to somebody at SED, and they told us you have to start at the beginning of a month. It can take a while to get approved. So we were sort of optimistically hoping for December, but thinking maybe January. We were actually approved 2 weeks ago. The woman at SED, working with Andrea, working with the RIC, it's this big data extract and coding every single student and transferring data. And she called and said, I think you're the first district that got it right the first time you submitted. So
good job.
a lot of credit to Andrea, her crew, and the RIC for helping us out. So we're good to go. We're ready. So December 1st, it'll be one day. It's a Friday. I think it'll be kind of nice. We'll have a couple weeks in December. It's a shorter one. There might be some growing pains. We might have some longer lines, and production might be tougher for Andrea and her crew. But it's great. So we anticipate our participation increase, specifically with breakfast. We found post-COVID, coming back to in-person instruction, that's really where we saw the biggest jump in our participation was with breakfast. We're going to promote it, we're going to encourage it, why not? Study halls, before forum, come out of them, go. So, I don't know if there's any questions. We drafted a letter.
So if they do breakfast, do they service for lunch?
Yes, yes. It's a first meal for both breakfast and lunch. So you can still purchase a second lunch. As you know, our philosophy here is to feed kids. Really don't turn kids away. So we'll work. We probably have some kids with some negative balances. Those don't get forgiven. So we'll chip away at that. Kids that have balances, and we mentioned this in our letter, if they have a balance, they can leave it there, because we still all there are items, so there is a way to purchase a second lunch. So that's all laid out in the letter. So spread the word, it'll be coming out officially tomorrow.
So, quick question, so like, we use the school bus system, right?
Yep.
Does that money, does that go straight to the, like, if that just sat there, would that go still be on our budget, or is that like in their account? How does that work?
It's your money, so it's the students in the students' so it'll either go toward purchases that could still exist, basically a la carte items or second launch purchases.
Let's say my kid never used that money.
It just
Refunded.
sits there.
No, it gets refunded.
Yeah, it just sits there, you can have it, you can refund it back from the funds account. 'Cause that was what happened with ours after the COVID stuff. I had money on one of the kids and it just sat there, never been used.
Matt, thank you for all your work.
Yeah.
To get that through.
Fabulous.
And next time, good news will be welcome.
I'll see what I can do. Let's
All
get to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Time for the best report of the day. Is this the best report of the day? You guys good news too?
No, I'm done.
No.
That was done for that. So, thank you. It was very quick. Alright. My first thing is green spaces. Our school is fortunate enough to be located on several acres of beautiful property. However, a large portion of our property remains unutilized. I propose that we change this by converting some of our vacant land into a recreational space for students, staff, and community members to enjoy. After speaking with Mr. Dowson, we agreed that it would likely not be possible to do this on some of the land behind the school, as it is a frequent floodplain. But we both agreed that the space in front of the school, surrounded by the bus circle, could be converted into an enjoyable space for students to hang out. We also agreed that no actual buildings would have to be built, just benches, picnic tables, maybe a gazebo. And the cost is the largest issue, but I believe that with some involvement from the HCS community, it wouldn't be all too expensive. This space would be a popular addition to the school environment. It wouldn't require much to be a welcome improvement to the school for students. And I also talked to Mr. Arquette about this, and I think thumbs up. Greg had double thumbs up.
Tinsley, could you just talk a little bit more about what you envision for the students?
Yeah, so I mainly kind of spawned this idea with Mr. Snyder, and so he, I think, used to teach at Madison, right? And when he was there, they had like a gazebo and they had like an outdoor space where students could hang out. And the reality is we just don't have that. Like we've got a playground and then just empty space. We've got like 6 soccer fields that just sit around doing nothing. So turning some of that space into like, some picnic tables for students to sit at, maybe during lunch, and use their privileges for, or a gazebo, which is what Madison has, I guess. And it wouldn't have to be crazy elaborate, it wouldn't have to be expensive, it wouldn't have to be some huge project, just something for students to enjoy, on their time off. And I think that I have actually gone out and I've seen students eating on the just wet ground in front of the school on the bus circle and having a picnic. And I think I talked to Mr. Arquette in 2000 about this. I'm like, there's charm to that, but imagine if that was a dedicated field. It would be much better. And we've got so much land for how big our school is, and there's no really doing much with it.
Could we maybe put that into some of what Johanna does too? And those students build some amazing things instead of purchasing that. That would make it even more special.
Involvement from the HCS.
Yeah, you go.
That's actually what Mr. Snyder and I talked about, is that we would like, there's a lot, like they could build something for us if we asked them. I'm sure they would. But I just think it'd be popular, and probably not crazy hard to do. Alright, second thing, Colgate opportunities. Recently, I was contacted by Professor Hagos at Colgate about petitioning the board to start some sort of summer research program for HCS students at Colgate. This program would involve some HCS students, regardless of GPA, prior Colgate affiliation, or any other category, to pair up with some Colgate professors for a research project of some sort. This would be an incredible opportunity for HCS students to learn directly from a respected university expert. However, beyond just this specific program, HCS has to foster a stronger connection with Colgate and take advantage of the numerous potential opportunities that Colgate can afford us. Officially, HCS secondary students have the opportunity to take Colgate courses throughout the year and participate in summer sessions. Colgate also offers tutoring jobs and other less official programs for high school students. Gotta remember that Oxford comma. However, the potential that Colgate presents us with is far greater. Aside from individual research programs like the one mentioned above, there are many other opportunities that we should be trying to take advantage of, such as professor mentorships, student mentorships, volunteering, internships, job shadowing, and much more. The benefits of strengthening our relationship with Colgate are immeasurable, from creating a stronger connection between Colgate and Hamilton, to boosting the transcripts of HCS secondary students, to granting students the unique opportunity, learning opportunity, and much more. Colgate is key to improving HCS as a district. However, the most crucial aspect of this whole process is ensuring that these opportunities are available to everyone, regardless of Colgate affiliation. Hamilton has a clear divide between those who already have some sort of connection with Colgate and those who don't. This program must help bridge this gap rather than expand it further. Furthermore, these programs must be well advertised and clearly express that they are open to anyone. Some of our current opportunities at Colgate are not, and still require some sort of affiliation in order to reliably sign up and take advantage of them. Whatever opportunities are available must be well advertised to all HCS students. I believe that Colgate affords HCS students the unique opportunity to learn from national experts. Additionally, by mainstreaming the opportunities Colgate offers via the school, we can help to solve one of the most pressing issues in Hamilton, class inequality. As a district, we have a responsibility to take advantage of this opportunity by bridging the gap between HCS and Colgate and allowing students to thrive.
In the beginning, as I mentioned, petitioning for, what would it actually take to do more of this?
It doesn't take any real action. Just administrative, creating opportunities and creating those pathways and relationships to expose your students more.
So Colgate has their seminar program for high school students. Do we have limited spaces there, is that right?
We do.
How many?
I think we're at 5.
Is there a reason for that? Is there a cost associated with it?
There's costs associated.
And then we have interest beyond that?
No. Typically, well, we haven't had that long since I don't think we've had a situation.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a request to go beyond our 5 slots.
I like the idea of bridging the gaps and making it for everyone. So that's important.
It also can make it more too.
Right. I started, my brain started turning to the ag opportunities and stuff there.
Good, well, thank you for getting our thoughts going on that. Any questions for Jim?
Thank you.
Page. SEL report was posted, so thank you for that. It was very interesting. I love the pictures. Knowledge sharing, I think we did that prior to this meeting, but is there anything that we do? I did do implicit bias webinar. The NISBA, somebody had it, and it was very interesting. It was well worth the hour and a half that I was on. The presenter was like the best presenter I think I've ever listened to for an hour and a half. And it was pre-recorded, and he made me feel like he was in my face. It was very, very good.
That was almost like
I have
implicit bias for good people.
Yeah, I have the link, and I think it's
good.
I think it's only good till tomorrow. So I will forward it to you after this meeting, but it goes dead at midnight tomorrow night. So if you have an hour and a half between, this and that.
So that you guys know too, if you get the NISBA update, like the Sunday thing message from the executive director is in there.
Well, this is, yeah, okay. I'll send this one as well,
Yeah, it's a recorded webinar, The Hidden Biases of Good People, Implications for Individuals and Organizations. The link is in there, but it does say it's only good until November 3rd. Oh,
No, they moved it because they had an issue with the link. So.
okay. Yeah, this says November 15th.
So I watched it yesterday.
Perfect. Cool.
So there's that.
It does also say in the agenda, elementary steering committee, secondary.
Yes, I heard Oh, yes.
Well, it's part of
Yeah.
knowledge sharing.
So elementary steering committee, you met today?
We did. I couldn't go we were at the retreat, or the conference last time. So you went to the one with Becky conference, that was the joint meeting. But today, we met again, and it was Matt and Bill were presenting on the upcoming capital project for capital improvements that are going to be proposed, and just kind of going through the list of all the different projects that are kind of on their minds, and then, the timeline for all of that. So they just ran that by the steering committee. I guess the building survey that they did, that King and Kin did, came up with a whole list of things, and then it's just figuring out what makes sense and then proposing it. So they presented to the elementary steering committee, and then they're going to do the same to secondary at some point.
And then to us from there. And then to us from there.
Yes, and the faculty. So it's the basic information that I included in my written report to you. It's the same information that Matt reported.
Then we didn't have that much time left, but we did hear about therapy dogs. So Mrs. Miller has therapy dogs come in, 2 dogs 1 time a week. It's lovely. Did they talk about therapy dogs? And then they talked about the wellness committee a bit, how they're focusing on staff wellness, and he was talking about the family run walk that they had, how there's another one this weekend. So, and then they're planning a wellness day for, I guess they don't have a date yet, but sometime maybe in February. So.
So for secondary, last month we had that combined meeting with talking about the culturally responsible framework. And she presented, kind of just gave an overview of what it was. Too much into the next steps of it, but that's being done with the faculty as well. So there's kind of a multi-step process. And then in our last meeting we had last week, the secondary sharing, we kind of reflected it together on that. And like I said in the earlier meeting, some of our thoughts were like, we can get quicker, maybe go a little quicker with some of the stuff. And there, but also talked about like how we're going to, explain this to the people who might be harder to reach, and make sure all of our communities are involved and engaged as we roll this stuff out and kind of solidify it. And then we were thinking about like what are the barriers to access for those for we talked a little bit about some of the different things that we can do this year, including helping with the review of code of conduct, more about trying to reach out to families, and working with that framework, improving communication, especially communication about that transition from elementary to middle school. Like, thinking again, like what's the best? Is the homeroom? Is the forum? We talk a lot about backpacks and lockers. Seems like a lot of high school students are not using their lockers right now, so they're just carrying their backpacks with everything in them everywhere they go. They're kind of all over the classrooms. And kids are walking and so we talked about, like maybe some brainstorming some ways to encourage students to reuse their lockers.
I think they don't know how. Like, as goofy as that sounds, like they look at 3 minutes. This is just this is something that comes up in my house very regularly. And it's kind of teaching them when to go to their lockers and how to, okay, you have these 3 cells not near there, so you drop your stuff off and you carry these things and you go to your locker. Like they don't know how to do that.
Well, then we were talking about in 6th grade, they make them do it. 6th graders are not using their backpacks like that, so maybe something like that or some other softer ways of encouraging students.
Yeah, I think some students just think it's an efficiency too.
Well, and they all had to during COVID, right? They didn't use their lockers. take everything to and from every day. Maybe they just need to be told, like, you don't have to do that. You can put some stuff in. So, I was wondering what your thoughts are. How many students are going, so that's something in the future, as a student do that.
I do want to add that I'm pretty sure it's the sixth grade that crowds that one hallway right there. And it's impossible to move through there at all. And then you put together like a tiny door, you just can't move in the section.
Since you're too young to be scared of younger people.
No, you're not scared of them, you're scared of like knocking them over. And if Mrs. E were in here, she would definitely talk about this. But I kind of agree, but at the same time, it's not nice. I've got all my school stuff with me right now. It's like,
That's pretty too. It's not that bad. Breakers is much bigger than that.
it's a computer and then this, and that's pretty much everything.
Well, that's one of the things we talked about was, helping students realize maybe you only need one binder, not 7.
Yeah,
How do you
use
all
all
of
of
these
this,
things?
and then you put all your textbooks in.
Well, I think that kind of goes with the school supply.
The school supply list.
Yeah. So
They
we talked
have
about
what
that
they're
too,
told.
like the school supply list, and we coordinate things.
I think it's gotten better. This last year, I do feel
Definitely
better.
The school supply list goes by each class, right? It's
Right.
like folder for this, folder for that, notebook for this, notebook for that.
Binder.
Yeah, I use that for every single paper I've ever gotten, including this, by the way. And then, I have like this notebook and like one other notebook. essentially. So,
But you are trained, or you have developed a method to
I
empty
guess
that
what I
out when it
think-
gets too full, right? And then
well, yeah,
add
obviously,
stuff to
I
it.
only have one unit of math stuff that comes.
Right,
But
right. So
I
that's
think-
what those, that's what everybody else needs to be able to do.
I
What you're
think
doing.
also, you know, not getting 4 notebooks when you only need 1 notebook for the space. It's probably pretty nice too.
So Mark, I figured out, we just need Tim Sater on a workshop.
Yeah. Oh, the workshop. The Tinsay system.
How about inclusivity committee?
Inclusivity committee, since the last board meeting, we had 2 meetings, October and November now, so 2 meetings. The October meeting, Mrs. Kowalski and Harnick presented their ideas for the mural project. They went into still in development, but they're giving a lot of consideration to the student involvement, which is great to see. In that meeting still, the community got into a discussion about the action plan and what we need for it. We discussed sort of both the format and audience for the written communication. Maybe that wasn't all about the action plan itself, but maybe there needing to be different ways of communicating and learning what inclusivity means for ACS at different age levels, and as well as what format would be appropriate for reaching out to families, parents, teachers, and things like that. We didn't have a lot of time to kind of flesh all of that out, but we concluded by maybe talking about might be worthwhile to have a survey as well to inform the action plan. I don't know how extensive that would be. We didn't really get into the details of that either. So that was the October meeting. The November meeting, then we got to the first phase of the 3-hour sessions of evaluating sort of the DI, identifying DI data gaps and using the email as my notes. So we were visited by Amy Combs from the Mohawk Regional Information Center, who helped us do a gallery walk to familiarize ourselves with the different metrics of measuring progress, including sort of graduation numbers, test, how well our students are testing, suspensions, as well as some of the AP course offerings and things like that. Even though we had 3 hours, we didn't really get a chance to talk about the conclusion of that exercise. We'll do that at the next 3-hour session. So what was difficult about this November meeting was that we had a little bit of a low turnout from the community members. I think it was difficult to have them there in the 3-hour session starting at 4, everybody's work and things like that. But it was definitely a good exercise for the folks.
Thank you. Good stuff. I'm all for you.
I sent everyone the 2 actions on the bills regarding the property tax cap and the disciplinary process for civil service employees. So it was a big thing. There's still a huge advocacy effort for truly universal school meals. So these new standards have opened it up for several more schools, but still not all. So they are doing an advocacy day at the Capitol building on January 9th to try to make those truly universal. And then the Capitol conference will be held on February 2nd. If anyone wants to sit on that day-long thing. It actually was pretty informative. But that's really it for now. They're coming off of the convention and just starting to get to work on the resolutions that were approved.
Correspondence, anything? We're good there? And now it's community participation. Please remember the policy. I'm not even going to say it to you, because you know it by heart, so I'll let you go.
Hi, everyone. I just jotted my thoughts down, so I didn't forget anything, so forgive me if it doesn't run any slow to it. Travis, thanks for that. I'm hopeful that the board will soon have a public board discussion or action related to the district retaining a SRO or at the very least a SPO full-time. I'm also realistic. I think it's become political. That's the public perception anyhow, and that's unfortunate. I'm not going to rehash the reasons for an SRO. There's a catalog of videos relating to that from last year's meeting. I will tell you this though. A lot of parents and community members are also upset that you chose not to hire an SRO. In fact, many people are or were under the assumption that the district has a SRO. They are or were unaware that it's a yearly appointment. I myself, I'm upset with you, the board, for choosing not to retain an SRO. It's a scary world, and I do worry about my family inside these halls, meaning that an SRO at the very least provides one with a sense of security, a feeling of comfort. I've heard the arguments against an SPO. I'm sympathetic to those, but those feelings can be used to improve the protocols related to this position. I've noticed this is a world where many people, especially young people, are anxious and fearful of law enforcement. To that, I think the district could help to alleviate its students' potential fears and anxieties related to law enforcement by exposing them to vetted law enforcement via a SRO or a SPO. It is the district's responsibility to help prepare its students for their futures, after all. Since this is a new board, a new year, I ask that the district again survey its students, staff, and parents and community with this one simple question. Would you want a SRO or SPO in the school full-time? You survey frequently for less, so what harm would there be in that? Last, relating to this, if the bargaining unit still feels so strongly about this as they did last year, I encourage them to speak up, perhaps even try to work it into their contracts to avoid this year-to-year tussle. If I still have time, I just want to touch on this. I know you can't answer, but I'm just curious where you're at relating to the revision of your COC that your staff and committees worked so hard on last year. In June, it was just about ready for a public hearing, yet here it is November, and I don't recall the board discussing it publicly. I hope that process is moving along. And last, I heard the RSA mentioned earlier. It was nice of them to help you out last year. Moving forward, I would encourage you to contemplate being a member of the RSA. This is a rural area, and joining them may help you to achieve more of your DEI-related goals and priorities. Thank you.
Nobody online. There's 2 people watching, I assume I'm one of them. So thank you to the other person. And there's no 2 halves. That does take us to executive session. There will be no voting after. So we will come back, as we always do, but we won't come back online. So I need a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss matters regarding the employment of particular individuals. Second. All those in favor?